Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Welcome back, everybody. I'm going to start with this just kind of quickly, although I think this continues to prove that this is coordinated, that a lot of the things that we see politically, both domestically and geopolitically, are certainly coordinated. And you can also take it as a bit of a warning to the bad guys, because the good guys have a great deal of information, if not everything, on the bad guys. And I basically just first start with the Melania Trump 6-minute talk that she gave earlier this past week. Again, when she came out instantly and said, I have no affiliation with Jeffrey Epstein, met him on a couple of occasions, emailed Ghislaine Maxwell on one occasion, and shortly after, of course, Epstein was kicked off of Mar-a-Lago for whatever he was doing, hitting on a 14-year-old girl. Trump kicked him out, made sure he never came back, the whole thing. What was funny about her speech, though, was what happened afterwards in the mainstream media, is they tried to make it look as if she was somehow departing from her husband, or that they were, well, I guess that she was basically doing this unannounced, and that the whole White House was completely surprised, and no one had any idea that she was going to give such a speech, and it blindsided even the president. You have to be kidding me. These people are calculated. They know exactly what they're doing. They know when they do it, why they do it. And in many cases, because there's an ongoing military operation and continues to be on a variety of different levels with endless psychological operations, there's no way that this was not coordinated. It was, because again, it was a warning. And I think a great deal of it not only had to do with Epstein himself, but a warning, of course, to Congress to get these victims to speak on the record to congressional officials and basically, again, out the names of the individuals who did assault them and the other people that they saw when they were, again, being assaulted, or when they were being transferred from point A to point B, or whatever it may be. Because shortly after that, that's when all of the news about Eric Swalwell continued to drop. Again, he's a current representative for the state of California. He's running in the gubernatorial race out there. He's dropping out, apparently, now, as there's video footage of him again with a woman on a bed. Someone's recording it, or a phone has been set up for either his purposes or her purposes or whatever. And of course, it's not his wife, which pretty much ends his entire political career. And he, again, won't be reelected to Congress anytime soon either. So he's done. But all of that happened, again, right after Melania's speech. That's not a coincidence. That's not accidental. And it's not a distraction either. It's not designed to distract from something that Melania Trump has done. I don't think she's guilty of anything by any stretch of the imagination, but of course Eric Swalwell is, because those who scream the loudest have the most to hide. And then in typical fashion, Swalwell comes out, says what he says, and then more information gets dropped and more victims are interviewed, even by CNN of all places. And then what happens? Big name Democrats all come out and they say again that Eric Swalwell needs to drop out of the race. But these people have done far worse than Eric Swalwell. They're talking about Nancy Pelosi, Hakeem Jeffries, Adam Schiff. What these people have done pale in comparison. I'm not making excuses for Eric Swalwell. Again, he should be thrown in a wood chipper. But the point is that her speech was drawing even more attention to the kinds of behavior of the real guilty people. And now coming up rather shortly, I believe, we're going to have Bill Gates testifying to the House Oversight Committee on all of this regarding Epstein. So that deposition video is going to find its way to YouTube and be uploaded by them, of course, just like the Clintons were and Les Wexner and the whole thing. Again, every single time that they trigger something, it's all coordinated. The good guys are certainly triggering a great deal of things to take place here that's forcing the hands of the bad guys to even turn on themselves and turn on one another. Because no one eats its own tail like the liberal snake. They do it all of the time. It happens constantly. They'll throw each other under the bus all of the time. And they do it in an effort, again, to basically deflect from what it is that they themselves have always done and are doing. In fact, just very quickly, as a quick little review. I've brought this up on the show before, but I'll mention it again. The reason that Adam Schiff, of course, has panicked as much as he has is because he's completely owned and totally blackmailed. The things that he has done, I think, would shock the core of just about anybody. Again, friends with Ed Buck, former donator to Hillary Clinton and numerous other Democrat campaigns out in California. Ed Buck, of course, would take in homeless black guys, pump them full of drugs, and then have sex with them. And then, of course, one of them died in his house. And then he was arrested for, again, possession of illegal drugs and prostitution and the whole thing. And then, of course, having a dead body in his house. Kind of a bad look. Anyway, as a result of all of that, and Ted Lieu, by the way, representative from California also, is in the same pictures with Ed Buck and Adam Schiff, all wearing bow ties and all looking remarkably terrible. But again, one of the major rumors with Adam Schiff is that he was in the Standard Hotel in West Hollywood, and he was there having sex with a drugged up boy, an underage minor, of course. It's redundant, but you get what I'm saying. And then apparently the child died while he was having sex with him, as the tale goes. And then, of course, a team came in, removed the body, disposed of it however they disposed of it, and Adam Schiff got out scot-free. Now, all of that, of course, would be on security footage by and large, and the management of the hotel would know about all of that. There was also a side rumor having to do with the famous chef Anthony Bourdain and how he apparently was at the Standard Hotel at the same time and apparently witnessed some of the aftermath regarding the whole cleanup operation of everything that had allegedly taken place. And then, of course, he ended up leaving and telling some people, and then before you know it, he's dead too. So I would just say this. This is another example of if you get on the Q board and you type in, for example, in this particular case, Standard Hotel, you get two posts. And they are far apart from one another. The first one was on January 31st of 2018, which is post 655. And it says the following. An anonymous person basically states, Wattsman was the general manager of the Standard Hotel in West Hollywood. She had worked for the company for nearly 11 years. And then they link an LA Times article that was titled, LATimes.com, Tragic Loss, 3 people killed aboard helicopter in Newport Beach crash are identified. And then Q posted below that and said, what happened at hotel? And then it says AS, which stands for Adam Schiff, it's believed to be anyway, in kill brackets, and it says, what is Adam Schiff attempting right now? Favor repaid, Q. This again is exactly why these posts mattered at the time and certainly mattered in real time, because if you were paying attention to what Adam Schiff was doing at that time, then the post would make more sense. Now, based on just recollection, this is when Adam Schiff was starting to put together the whole Russia hoax and all of those committee meetings in Congress, interviewing endless people about Donald Trump and the Ukraine call and all of that. Again, he was being blackmailed and controlled to do all of that. And you can see it in the guy's face. I mean, he looks like a psycho and his eyes are huge because he's been caught. He's seen a lot of horrible stuff that he himself has done, and behind those eyes is a whole lot of evil. And then the very next post, and it's the last one having to do again with the Standard Hotel, is dropped 3,158 on March 20th of 2019, and it just says, The Standard Hotel, Rachel Chandler, Q. Rachel Chandler, of course, being one of the curators of children and women and young girls for Epstein and Maxwell. And did they use the Standard Hotel as a place to meet up and make arrangements? Probably, yes. That's certainly, again, the general connection there. So my point is that there's always a pattern here when it comes to why particular speeches seem to come out of nowhere, particular messages are made, and then even stretching, again, as I've said before, right into Donald Trump's own Truth Social posts, which he himself is not the one actually making. He doesn't make the posts. No one's actually seen him, make an actual truth post of any kind. He's dictated them before. I'm not saying that he hasn't made one at one time or another, but most of these, again, are very, very coordinated, and rightfully so. So someone with the military is usually in charge of it. And just this past week, again, on April 10th, he put out a truth post that simply said, "World's most powerful reset." 3 exclamation points. It's all bold-faced. President DJT. Again, no one in the media brought that up. No one mentioned that particular post because, again, if it's over their head, they don't ask any questions. They just let it go. They completely let it disappear. But any time that he makes a post like that, if you're interested in a history lesson or an examination as to what's really going on in the current time, then you can go to the Q board and you can immediately, again, type in the term, for example, reset. Because that's really the word that stands out, certainly among us who read those posts at the time. And if you do that, you end up with the following posts, and there are 5 of them. And they're in order here. Again, you can list them chronologically. And again, if anybody wants to check this out yourself, the website again is operationq.pub. The first one is post 48 on November 2nd of 2017. And again, as I read this, ask yourself whether or not it seems to fit with what's going on right now in the news. It says the following, quote, "What is Q clearance? What hint does that explicitly refer to? DOE? Question mark. Who would have the goods on uranium-1? U1. Does stating Q refer that people works in DOE? No. Does it refer that someone dropping such information has the highest level of security within all departments? Why is this relevant?" Then it says May 10th, BO, Barack Obama, "Russia should be viewed," quote, this is a quotation, "Russia should be viewed as a friendly partner under Section 123 the Atomic Energy Act of 1954, unquote, after agreeing to a new nuclear weapons reduction deal and helping U.S. with Iran." Who is the enemy? What is being continually stated by all Ds? Russia is what? What did the Russia reset, there's the word, really provide? Clearance pathway to complete the uranium-1 deal? Why is the Canadian Prime Minister so important? They never thought they were going to lose. The calm before the storm, unquote. Then the next post is 237, again later that month on November 30th, and it says, "What if North Korea had miniature nuke payload delivery in 2004? What if North Korea had ICBM capability since 2009? What if the previous tests that failed were staged? Why would this be relevant? Who is involved and why? Biggest cover-up in our history. Uranium-1-CA-EU-Asia/North Korea. Iran deal. Russian reset. Q." So basically what we're being told here is that Asia, North Korea, the European Union, Canada, were all involved in uranium-1 enrichment, or at least the story of that, and that some kind of an attack was going to happen out of North Korea to blame North Koreans for something. Because again, North Korea was one of those countries that was another proxy country for the CIA, Mossad, MI6, and the whole deep state to just play ball and do whatever they wanted to do, just like Iran. But Iran, my point is this. In all of these reset posts, in all 5 of them, Iran consistently comes up in all of them. Another one, again, is post 3836 on February 6th of 2020, and it talks about Hillary Clinton again. Uranium-1. It says, again, there's a big post, but it says, "Think USAID in Ukraine is greater than Ukraine. Think worldwide aid is greater than Ukraine. Think uranium-1, sales of U.S. uranium to Russia." It says, "Think Ukraine, think Russia, or think Iran rather. Russia and Iran allies, question mark. Russia, Iran, and China allies, question mark. U.S. political corruption in China, U.S. political corruption in Ukraine, U.S. leverage on behalf of whom? U.S. political corruption, Russia. U.S. political corruption, Iran. Common denominator, China, Russia, and Iran. Closed financial systems, ? Logical thinking. And yeah, they were and are closed financial systems. That's the problem. They're closed in that they're getting oil and other resources for next to nothing. It's not out in the open market for people to see and people to monitor the price and movement of those goods and services. And as a result of that, again, they're essentially doing it for favors under the table. And that's what's being exposed here. And again, the simple fact that the United Kingdom has not gotten involved in any of this should show everybody that they are involved in all the wrong ways. That's why they're not getting involved in the solution to any of this, which has already been handled. At least from what I can tell, it's already been handled. Probably years ago, as I said in previous episodes, and I'm not the only one who thinks that way. But everything that everybody is seeing on their TV, they're acting as if it's still happening now. I mean, are we ever going to have a day in the future here where we never have to hear the term the Strait of Hormuz? Or are we just going to keep hearing that for the next 2-3 years? Again, I would put it this way too from a strategic standpoint, because this is where the enemy exposes themselves, and this is exactly why this is also the art of war. If, say, for example, you have a tree in your backyard, and there's a hornet's nest in that tree. Some people can see it, some people can't, but it's up there and it does exist. If someone points it out and says, look at that hornet's nest, that's probably not a good idea. We need to get rid of that. The tree can exist. We don't have a problem with the tree. We don't have a problem with the leaves. All of that's fine. Most of the branches are probably okay, but there's still a hornet's nest up there, and there might be 2 in the future or more, and lots of hornets inside each nest. But certainly the one that we can all see is right up there. So we're going to go over there and we're going to take it out. And we're going to take it down, and we're going to dismantle it, and then we'll make sure again that hopefully another one doesn't get built. Any person who says, no, don't go over there and take out that hornet's nest, that means pretty clearly that those groups or those people are affiliated with that hornet's nest to some extent, either maintaining its existence at the very least, or profiting from its existence, or allowing it to continue to do whatever it is that it wants to do, including reproducing and continuing to create chaos if necessary, in order to, again, gain something back and get a kickback of some kind. That's the only reason, again, that all of these past presidents haven't done anything. It's the only reason that the UK didn't do anything. It's the only reason that the European Union hasn't done anything. Is because this has to do with not just oil, but the entire banking system and illegality. You have to keep something in mind too, is that it's not just oil on those boats. There's guns, there's drugs, and there's human beings. If you could imagine something that fits inside of one of those containers, those massive containers and the stacks and stacks of containers that are on those cargo ships, if you can fit something in one of those containers, it's in it. I mean, hell, there's a Jason Statham movie out that's coming out in August about that very thing. He boards, I think it's called Mutiny. He boards a cargo ship, busts open one of the containers on the inside, and it's filled with human beings. We know that, again, this is where human trafficking takes place. So when people, again, like the Tucker Carlsons of the world or the Megyn Kellys or whomever, whichever person it is, says, well, no more foreign wars. Well, what about, again, dismantling human trafficking operations, and what if it's already been dismantled? Would anybody support that? Of course they would. Everybody would support that. Because that's one of the things, again, that brings everybody together. Hopefully, is the well-being of children. And the well-being of, again, human beings not being trafficked for a variety of reasons, whether it be blood libel, or organ harvesting, or adrenochrome, or whatever. The whole point is to dismantle those lines of communication and those pathways of transportation, and that's occurring. Now, to just wrap up this particular Q post, and again, these 5 posts, there's just one more here that says, it's post 4942 on October 30th of 2020. And it links a Time article, a time.com article, which no longer exists, but it was titled Collection Great Reset. And then Q simply said, this is not about Republican versus Democrat. This is about preserving our way of life. If America falls, the world falls. Patriots on guard, Q. Yep, pretty crystal clear there. Now, there was also this one. And this is interesting too, because again, anytime a word gets used or a saying gets used, and certainly the media doesn't jump all over it because they don't know what it means, then they're not going to bring it up, which means you can go to the Q board, type in the word, and probably read some of the posts and see if it's still relevant to what's going on today. As it turns out, it really is. Donald Trump made this particular post on April 12th here, as I'm recording this, very early in the morning. Again, there's no way he was the one who made this post, but either way, it says the Trump card the president holds if Iran won't bend, a naval blockade. And then it's a Just the News article. Now again, if there's a military presence there, which we can assume that there has been for many years and probably still is, that means that we are in control of what's going on over there, which isn't a bad thing in the slightest. But if you get on the Q boards and you type in the term blockade, you end up getting a great deal of posts, specifically 24 of them. Now, there's a way to summarize this, which I've already done before and I've explained before, but I'll do it one more time and give you an example. You can get on the website and you can categorize them again chronologically if you want. After, of course, typing in the term blockade in the upper right-hand portion of the search bar, and then all of the posts that have the word blockade pop up. And then you take that web address and you toss it into ChatGPT and you ask it, okay, what are these Q posts talking about when it comes to a blockade? And then it gives you basically, again, the general definition, but multiple definitions. And that's all I asked it. And then it said the following. It says, in those Q posts, blockade is not used in the strict military sense. It's used metaphorically and rhetorically to suggest that something, usually information, resources, or action, is being deliberately cut off. What blockade normally means in standard usage, a blockade is a deliberate effort, to prevent movement or access, often of goods, people, or communication. Historically, a wartime tactic to isolate an enemy by cutting off supplies or contact. It says more broadly, it can mean an international obstruction or restriction of flow, information, trade, or access. And then it says how Q uses blockade, the term blockade. They use it as an information blockade, suggests that media, tech companies, or institutions are preventing certain information from reaching the public. It implies censorship, suppression, or narrative control. They said this is the most common meaning in Q-related content. Number 2, operational and strategic blockade definition, framed as actors being cut off from resources, communication, or escape routes. Often vague and could refer to financial pressure, legal action, or intelligence operations. And then 3, psychological framing. The term is used to create a sense of siege, urgency, and hidden conflict, the war behind the scenes. And it says the key takeaway is when Q says blockade, it almost never means ships surrounding a country. Instead, it usually means something like information, communication, or power is being intentionally restricted or cut off. Let me give you another example of how this term blockade has been used, certainly again within the Q posts, and the definition that the AI system there provided fits perfectly. The COVID-19 lie was a blockade. That was designed to be put up to distract the American people in an attempt to also distract the president from all of the gains that had taken place in his first administration. And then in an attempt, of course, to sway the election and steal the election of 2020, which occurred. Again, it didn't sway the election like people all of a sudden stopped voting for Donald Trump. That's not what happened. But it was put in place by the bad guys as a distraction, and then that plan was then sped up by the good guys to make sure that it wouldn't be drawn out over the course of, say, 5 to 10 to 15 years. But everything, again, was just put into overdrive as quickly as possible. So they fed the president intentionally bad information, but in this particular Q drop, which is, let me give you the number here, 4620, Again, it's a long one, but it goes through the entire COVID-19 lie, line by line. And again, this was on July 31st of 2020. So it was talking about an insurance plan above fail. And then it says C19 installed, impeachment termination, loss of power, POTUS inside of box, prevent counterattack. Then it says C19 stage 1, and then it gives directions. C19 stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, stage 5. And then it again lays out exactly what each political party was doing and what they weren't doing, but how all of this again was basically a shadow government play in order to distract the American public and put up a blockade so that they couldn't pay attention to what they were really trying to do, which was, of course, eliminate Donald Trump, take him off the map completely, and then steal an election with, of course, mail-in ballots and the whole thing, drop boxes. And they did all of that. But they didn't seem to understand that they were in the process of also being caught, that it wouldn't have mattered what they were doing. It didn't matter what blockade plan they had up. The good guys already had it all figured out, and they just caught him. In fact, I'll read this one last post. This doesn't have anything to do with the COVID lie or anything, but this summarizes, again, the term blockade and how it's been used in the past. This was post 3312 on April 11th of 2019. It said, quote, "If we were merely a LARP, asking questions on the chans, why are we being attacked daily by some of the world's biggest media companies, social media companies deliberately applying censorship, banning, shills paid/inserted to disrupt media matters, quote unquote." It says, or in parentheses rather, it says blue checkmark, coordinated attacks, etc., all for a conspiracy, quote unquote, on the chans, all for a LARP. Why is there a constant flow of disinformation being pushed regarding Q? Example, disinformation push regarding Mueller is a white hat. Fake and false narrative. Think blockade. When you can't attack the information directly, you attack the source. If that fails, you create false, misleading information to discredit knowing, select, unaware followers who would not take the time to self-corroborate the claims. Same vehicle/tactics used by fake news media. Logical thinking always wins. Nothing can stop what is coming. As the target targets, turn to the other side. The attacks will intensify. We have the source, Q. I think that's also referencing individuals in the right-wing media, again, intensifying attacks against the current administration and what's going on in Iran or what has gone on in Iran. And again, all of them basically working together. It's not that they're all bad people, but it's that they're out of the loop. Again, when Donald Trump calls them names and things like that and, gives them nicknames and calls them stupid and whatever else, or that they're low IQ, this, that, or the other, I think, again, that a lot of that has to do with just pure kayfabe. It's just completely fake. It's manufactured chaos because it's designed to throw off the media. It's designed to confuse people. The problem is that there is collateral damage when it comes to that because that confuses your average American citizen. Someone would say, well, Tucker Carlson's teaching the American people about a great deal of really important things and really bad people. Why is it that Donald Trump would attack him all of a sudden? Well, it's not that he's really attacking him. And it's not that it's, this gossip back and forth distraction. It's basically designed, again, to soak up the media time and soak up any of that attention that comes with all of that. But there's also, again, the aspect that Fox News never even brings up Tucker Carlson anymore. I mean, they don't even bring up Megyn Kelly. They don't even have them on as guests, as if to say, hey, you used to work here. Now look what you do, and what do you think about the current state of affairs? I mean, that never happens either. But that's because those two individuals bring up particular stories that Fox News never touches with a 10-foot pole. Certainly Tucker doesn't anyway. But there's another point, of course, that lots of people have brought up, which is that there's numerous exposure operations taking place. And as we know, one of the constant ones is Israel. That's consistently going on. Again, Netanyahu is the bad guy, which clearly he is. He's a warmonger. He's a war criminal, which clearly he is. If people use their own discernment and they think for themselves and they piece together these things, you can arrive at that very logical conclusion. Again, what's he doing right now? Just within this last week, he's threatened Turkey and Spain. And he's done so because, again, either Spain was making fun of the IDF and basically saying that they're murderers, and they're not wrong, even though Spain is basically a communist government as well, by and large. And then, of course, he blamed Turkey for housing so-called Hezbollah leaders, so he says, and basically says that, that they need to attack Turkey next. Again, I don't think that's going to happen, not by any stretch, but people are getting to see again that there's one group over there that stands alone that is really interested in forever wars, and it's Israel. So again, if you take away the areas of influence and the places where Israel has been able to, again, try to topple governments and kill innocent people and take over their land and 1,000 other things, if you take away those areas and you put your own presence there, then they have nowhere else to play. And I think, again, that that's one of the things taking place. I would mention this too, and it's a bit of a shift here, but I think it's certainly relevant. The Bilderberg meeting ended this past week, and it was being held in Washington, D.C. Of course, where these meetings used to be secret, now they're basically out in the public by and large. Of course, we're not on the inside, but you have to assume that there are spies on the inside, to say the least. Just a quick little summary of this. It says it on its own website. Founded in 1954, the Bilderberg meeting is an annual conference designed to foster dialogue between Europe and North America. Every year, between 120 and 140 political leaders and experts from industry, finance, academia, and media are invited to take part in the meeting. About 2/3 of the participants come from Europe and the rest from North America. Approximately a quarter from politics and government, and the rest from other fields. On their website, they also show the list of people who are present within this meeting, apparently. And at the very top of the list, as it's listed alphabetically, the first name is Stacey Abrams, the CEO of SageWorks Production. Yes, that's Stacey Abrams, the Georgia gubernatorial candidate and election denier and fraudster and the whole thing. Again, when these people pop up out of nowhere and they have no accomplishments and they make their way to a Bilderberg group, they're completely owned. 100%. Albert Bourla is there, CEO of Pfizer. I mean, it's a real who's who of assholes, but they're all there. And there's no way, again, that they're not being spied on. Again, a national emergency was declared in 2020 over the so-called COVID lie. But if a national emergency is declared, you can use that national emergency to surveil just about anybody you want. And why would you not want to surveil the people attending this meeting and get a glimpse as to what exactly they're talking about, what they're scheming, and all of this? Again, this is a government within a government within a government. And it really does have to be dismantled eventually. So I'm not a fan of any of it, of course, but you can bounce over again on their website, bilderbergmeetings.org. You can check out all the names of the people who were there. Some of them I recognize, some of them I've never even heard of. Again, in this day and age, when it comes to guilt by association, you would think that these people would want to stay away from such a meeting and such a gathering of individuals, certainly within Washington, D.C., let alone anywhere. But if they're controlled, then they're told to go. And they don't have a choice. But then again, a lot of these individuals just operate naively, understanding that we pay attention to these kinds of meetings, and we already know the general conversations that take place because, again, it is a government within a government, and it's not a positive one. I mean, if Albert Bourla walks in the room, everybody should lose their appetite, and everybody should just kind of stand up and walk away. But all these people are getting together from all of these lines of industry and artificial intelligence and 1,000 other things. I mean, the topics that are bringing up, the very first one in alphabetical order was artificial intelligence, and you would expect that. But if these people are dumb enough to get in the same room with one another and scheme and meddle and do what we know that they're doing, I mean, they're not meeting together to talk about how to leave everybody alone. They're not saying, you know what, we've intervened too many times with too many innocent people and we've killed enough innocent people. Perhaps we should just stop. Perhaps we should just let it go and not do this anymore. I mean, they're not doing that, which means they have to be surveilled, because if they're even talking about overthrowing anybody within our own government, then they're guilty of treason and sedition. So, hey, if they want to walk into that trap, I'm all for it. I've got one last thing here. This is Ohio related. The gubernatorial race, of course, is in full swing. Less than a month to go before people vote, and I hope that Vivek Ramaswamy does not win. Please vote Casey Putsch if you're listening to this and you live in Ohio. And Marcel Sturbich also, so we can get rid of Robert Sprague. And again, I wouldn't recommend voting for Dave Yost for dog catcher, but that's just me. Anyway, Amy Acton, who I've criticized on X before, apparently she's a raging drunk. And that shouldn't surprise anybody because essentially every time she talks, she has a hard time stringing together a sentence and she sounds slurred all the time. Again, even in these little gatherings that she has on the so-called campaign trail. But a story came out of her just recently here having to do with a domestic violence call in her home where her and her husband were apparently having an argument and she punched a mirror or broke some glass or something, cutting her hand, and both her and her husband were intoxicated, and she was on pills also in the whole thing, and apparently some dispute over her long work hours back in 2019. So, whatever. Again, she's unhinged. I think that goes without saying. But the police showed up apparently to their residence after some noise was being made or someone was called. And it says here, Acton, the director of the state's Department of Health, now a Democratic candidate for governor, pulled a mirror off the wall, shattering the glass, when she became upset because she felt her husband was antagonizing her, according to a police report. She told officers that she had been drinking, had taken an unknown amount of prescription drugs, and was about to drive away in her car before her husband, who also told police he had been drinking, talked her out of it, the report stated. There you go. That's somebody who should be running our state. I'm kidding, of course. She's a psycho. And again, if you listen to any of her speeches, she sounds intoxicated all of the time. She has mashed potato brains. There's just no way around it. Again, the only clear and coherent pick for governor is Casey Putsch. In fact, it's even come out very recently from the Constitutionalist over on X that Vivek Ramaswamy again, and this is apparently now well known, it was told to me by a friend, and I believe them without a doubt, that of course Vivek Ramaswamy would keep tax-paying older individuals away from some of his events, in particular on college campuses, because he would hand select or his handlers would hand select particular students to just ask softball questions. So that happens on college campuses, but apparently Vivek has a long-standing history of basically censoring copious amounts of people from speaking during any of his gatherings. That it's not just a college campus thing, it's basically an anywhere thing. So that right there should tell you all you need to know about him too. But Ohio's got a serious choice to make, and I'm telling you, if they choose poorly, we are screwed. I have two pieces of audio of Casey Putsch here that I want to play. Both of these, again, were reposted by the Constitutionalist, but they're on Casey Putsch for Ohio governor over on X. And he's talking to someone from The Hill. And so here's the first piece of audio, and he's describing Vivek Ramaswamy, of course, and a little bit of his past, which most people are well aware of. It's just rife with fraud. He shows up again at speaking events and calls himself a billionaire and goes, well, I earned my money the hard way. No, you didn't. You earned your money by scamming people. Again, Vivek Ramaswamy belongs in jail. But here's one clip here of Casey Putsch, again, briefly describing some of this in 3, 2, 1.
And I've heard you say he doesn't have the best interest of Ohioans.
Of course not. Let me put it this way. Let's just look at this on a normal person level. Forget about the politics. This is a man who, he didn't go to higher education in Ohio. He went to Harvard and Yale. Somehow he was already making, as I had heard in an interview, well over $500,000 in college. That's good for him. But he took a scholarship from Soros family money. Kind of weird. Of course, he was born to Indian foreign nationals and grew up Hindu. He went to Catholic private school in high school, but of course later is practicing Hindu. Now, I'm not criticizing that. This is America. We have freedom of religion. I will fight for that. But I'm just pointing out some details. If you go a little further, you realize this man has no businesses in Ohio. Despite his massive wealth, he's done no philanthropy in Ohio. And it's funny because I did a speech at a county Republican thing for an endorsement. And then later I went there in person, and later he phoned in. And I think they were letting him listen to my speech because he said that he's donated something like $100,000 to charities or whatnot. Of course, he didn't name it. Of course, he's put in no time of his own. And I'm thinking, do these people realize I put the last 11 years of my life, I got a Lifetime Achievement Award from Trump's administration, Biden, and got to fly with the Air Force Thunderbirds and don't get paid, legitimately teaching and getting people jobs and building an educational program that fixes the educational system where it leaves off with no support from the government at all. But Vivek will tout that he donated allegedly money to charity that is a tiny fraction of the amount of money he has spent in jet fuel alone, just traveling around Ohio in a private jet in the last 6 months. So, sorry, not sorry.
Here's one more clip of Casey Putsch talking about government's involvement in education, again with the same host of this Hill podcast, in 3, 2, 1.
Such a difficulty with government is, in general, whether it's a small level or federal level or state, the biggest endeavor of government is simply to grow and have more power and get more money. But government creates nothing. Government creates no wealth for people, and any power they have is taken from the people. And I bring that up because we get into arguments with everything from the medical world to rights, especially with the educational system, where people always want to create new programs, more funding, when the problem is the root. And the problem is understanding that. When government just wants more and more programs, all you're doing is spending more money and making things but where are we screwing up? The whole purpose of school is to let young people have a curriculum that actually lets them grow and get somewhere and go through the program and work and go beyond. It's not an industry to itself. It's not the end-all be-all of life. There are so many things where we need to realize it's the family, it's the parents that need to have the power at the end of the day to see fit for what's happening. That's another terrifying thing with regard to public education. We've seen examples where teachers don't share things with students or with parents. We're not respecting the authority of the family unit to make the best decisions. And there are some pretty horrific things that have happened with political leverage because of that. That can't be. The other thing is we have to be fair and give the opportunity for homeschooling. We have to be fair and giving more opportunity for people to be able to. Are you stuck in this school system? Can you get to another? If you're paying for private school, are you also paying for public school? These are complex issues, also a subject for another time. But the reason I bring them up is we have to allow people to do what's best for their kids and their families, because at the end of the day, they know what's best, not the government.
Again, he's not wrong, but one of the things it's very difficult for people to understand is that the entire school system and the people who work within are brainwashed to believe the exact opposite. They are brainwashed to believe that they're the ones with the so-called degrees, that they're the ones with the experience and the training, and therefore they outweigh any influence that the parents could possibly have, and it's the system that knows better. Again, they refer to other people's children as their own kids. My kids, our kids, these kids. It's supposed to be their students, but their use of the word kids should prove to everybody again that they believe that government is the parent. Unfortunately, too, a great deal of parents have terrible judgment. And this next story, I think, exemplifies that perfectly. This is from Local 12, the local news outlet here in the Tri-County, Tri-State area. And it was titled, "Former Claremont County Preschool Teacher Arrested on Sex Charges Involving a Minor." So you have a male, an 18-year-old, from Batavia Township, facing multiple felony sex charges after police said that he admitted to kissing a 5-year-old student and deleting photos ahead of a police interview. Christopher Helmer, 18, was arrested on April 9th by the Pierce Township Police Department. The felonies stack up here, as one might expect. 1 count of gross sexual imposition, a 4th-degree felony. 1 count of grooming, a 5th-degree felony. 1 count of pandering sexually oriented matter involving a minor, a 2nd-degree felony. Now, again, you would think that that would be the first red flag. What is an 18-year-old male doing working at a daycare, and who would allow such a thing? And then you have, of course, the name of the daycare, which you can't even make this up. It's Jelly Bean Junction. Again, does anybody have any judgment? Do parents have any judgment whatsoever? Let's drop our kids off at Jelly Bean Junction. Nothing bad could ever happen there. It's called Jelly Bean Junction. Oh, you have an 18-year-old male working here? No problem. That's not suspicious in the slightest. Now, I wasn't going to mention this, but it fits. And again, you can take this a couple of different ways. I'll leave it up to you. I have a take on this, and I'm going to mention it. Just the other day, a kid walks into my driveway. Now, I've never seen this kid before in my life, but there are some kids in the neighborhood and younger kids in the neighborhood. And this kid walks up into the driveway with his bicycle. He bikes past my dog. Hello, doggy. Pets my dog. And then he looks at me and he goes, "Are you missing anything?" And I went, "No." And he says, "Well, if you ever find yourself missing anything, I'm a detective and I can help you find it." And he pulls out a pad of paper out of his pocket and a pen. And I looked at him and I went, "I'm good, man. Have a nice day." He goes, "Okay." And then he turns around and he bikes away. Now, again, I understand that somebody would say that that interaction is an innocent, harmless interaction from a child to an adult. They'd be like, it's just a kid pretending being a kid. But that's not the world that we live in anymore. That world is dead and gone. The days of somebody being able to talk to a stranger. I mean, hell, when I was his age, I was taught by my parents, don't talk to strangers. Don't roll up on strange people's homes. Don't knock on their front door and ask them if they need help finding something. This is exactly where a kid would get kidnapped. This is where a kid would get molested. This is where something horrible would happen to a child. So again, it's just goofy interactions like that where I just think to myself again, where are the parents? I mean, do parents in this day and age teach their children to not talk to strangers? Don't talk to strangers, don't believe strangers, don't go in strange places. If someone says, "Come over here, sit over here," yeah, you can come into my house and we can play detective all you want. I mean, honest to God, it's as if, again, there's just no life lessons, certainly in the interest of protecting children anymore. I mean, I find it refreshing, and it was really in 2020 when I first started seeing this, when all of a sudden all these kids just kind of came out of the woodwork in this neighborhood, and they all crawled out of their basements or wherever the hell they were being kept, and you started to see them like playing in their yard and getting together and riding bikes together. And I was like, wow, that's refreshing. Haven't seen that in a very long time. I mean, it was kind of, it was refreshing. It was like, oh, okay, this is what America used to look like. But apparently, there's no one teaching these children to not fall for peer pressure. And there's no one teaching these children to be vigilant. Yes, they can bike around all over the place all they want and go from house to house and hang out with friends and whatever. I mean, that's fine. But rolling up on a house that they've never been to before. One kid in particular and doing that and asking that, it just seems strange to me. It seems very odd. I never did that as a kid. I never rolled up on a stranger's house and was like, "Hey, I'm a detective. I can help you find stuff." I mean, that's when you disappear. But if you've got parents sending their kids to a daycare called Jelly Bean Junction, I mean, Jesus. That pretty much gives it away, doesn't it? Judgment is just lost on so many people. I mean, what are they going to call it next? Candy in the Van Daycare? and they drive around a giant van that just says candy on the side? Well, they're a daycare. Are they? Or are they doing something else? Who do they hire? What's your vetting process? Again, there's 18-year-old males working here. Why is that the case? Well, they need a strong male figure, and that's what we think is important. Again, did they search this person out themselves, or did this guy knock on their front door with a resume in hand and go, hey, I'm 18, I like daycares? I mean, again, if an 18-year-old knocks on your daycare who's a male and goes, hey, I would like a job, normally you turn that person away. Would you like a job? Get bent. Go work at Subway. Go do something else. This is a daycare. It's for adults, primarily run by women, hopefully non-abusive women. Again, the lack of judgment and the manipulation within the entire business, specifically of education, continues to blow me away. And I have another example here that I think continues to exemplify the points that I've made here on the show for many years. And it's that, unfortunately, there are all of these social engineering movements that exist within the business that are used as publicity stunts. And we know that men playing in women's sports is awful, and that should go without saying at this point. But the simple fact that in itself as a topic is used as a publicity stunt over and over and over again, certainly by the mainstream media and everybody else, to prop up certain individuals to make it look like they're role models, when in fact, the solution to the problems that are being experienced by endless people in this business is really only one. There is only one solution, and as I've said a million times, it's to walk away from the entire business. It's to provide endless other opportunities for an individual to educate themselves, because educating yourself for a lifetime, throughout a lifetime, is really the point. It's not to be associated with a brick and mortar institution. It's not to walk around with the name of a school on a sweatshirt for the rest of your miserable life. Or again, to have this historic association with some past institution that you once attended. Again, I attended Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. I graduated from there. Same thing with Walden University, have 3 degrees. Don't really care. None of the diplomas hang on walls, and I don't have a single article of clothing with any of those names on them. And the reason is rather simple. I don't pledge allegiance to those institutions, not by any stretch. They were just lily pads. That's all. One lily pad to the next, and then you just keep moving. But it's the people, again, who stop and then just pledge allegiance to those institutions for the rest of their lives. They almost immediately stop learning. Because, again, they get stuck in a mind frame of, well, what I experienced then was the best time of my life, and that's it, and it's never going to get any better, so I'll just remain in that same mind frame for the rest of my life, regardless of what I do. The problem is that these education movements, quote unquote, and these organizations and NGOs that get involved with the education business, they all do the same thing. They prop up, and I'm talking about so-called conservative Republican ones too, specifically them. They will prop up young people as being role models for their own movements, pushing back allegedly against the man, when in fact, the only solution really is to advocate for people to leave the system, not to fight it from within, because when they fight it from within, all they're really doing is maintaining the grift, and they're grifting off of the grift, like Moms for Liberty. Again, a lot of people wouldn't criticize Moms for Liberty because they're like, well, Moms for Liberty is a good cause, and Donald Trump knows about Moms for Liberty, and so do endless other people and civil rights organizations and Elon Musk and blah, blah, blah. That's great. But when you make your way to Fox News and you're recycling the same messages that have already been recycled in the past, that maintain, again, the government control of education, which is mind control, And then again, these young impressionable kids are propped up as role models or people to follow, like the Riley Gaineses of the world, or even younger individuals like this one clip I'm going to play, which kind of proves my point, is that in the eyes of them, it's a popularity contest. It's basically like a publicity stunt to some extent. Let's talk about how boys shouldn't play in girls' sports again. It's like, you don't have to say it anymore. We already got it. We got it. If you don't want to play in a sport where a boy is pretending to be a girl, then stop playing the sport. If you don't want to attend an institution where, again, the gays and the trannies and the cat ear wearers who shit in litter boxes are all being supported, or having moments of silence for solidarity for the, criminally insane. I mean, if an institution is doing all of that, then you bankrupt the institution with your lack of participation. That's how you control the situation. You don't feed into it by giving them, again, more attention or attempting like you're going to change anything from working from within, because you can't. That's not a defeatist approach, by the way. I mean, I just provided the solution. You walk away. But here's this particular story, just very quickly. This is from a Scarlett Johnson over on X. Scarlett 4 Kids, the number 4. It says, the haters are coming after 16-year-old Ella, the young Wisconsin girl leading the fight to get boys out of girls' bathrooms in K-12 schools. Now, let's be clear. Good for this 16-year-old. Okay, I'm happy for her. That's great. The best advice she could provide, and the adults in her life that could certainly provide her this advice, is to leave the entire system and walk away. Stop giving them your tax money and your participation. But the message, again, regarding this Ella gal goes on. Ella is strong and so is her family, but she's just a kid. To my followers, please show her some support. And then it's all these links, including Harmeet Dillon, Riley Gaines, all of it. She's even made her way to Fox News. Now here's a particular clip, which again, this is from Moms for Liberty. It kind of, again, proves my point that this is a bit of a publicity stunt, and that they always use younger voices, and they tend to pick, pretty blonde girls or more attractive girls to push these messages because, again, they see a cash cow in all of this. So the girl is being used not knowing that she's basically recycled, and that her image and her message is constantly recycled for different generations to keep groups like Moms for Liberty alive, when in fact, if Moms for Liberty really just provided the rational solution, which is walk away and bankrupt every school district across America right now and overnight, then things might change. But they use these young people to, again, push their own message with or without their full knowledge as to what they're really being used for. Because, again, it's not really just about pushing a message of not having boys and girls sports. It's about making sure that Moms for Liberty continues to make money. So here's this kid talking about this. And again, you can hear talking sort of about the popularity part of all of it and the recognition and all of that. And again, that's not really the point. That shouldn't be the point. But give her a listen here in 3, 2, 1.
You walk out there and whatever they say, you just let it flow off you. You have your opinion, they have theirs. You respect that. First found out, I was like, oh my gosh, I was telling everyone. I said, Mom, Riley Gaines just reposted this video, and I had to make my own Twitter account because I've been off that because there's a lot of hate and stuff like that, so I stay off it. I made my own Twitter account. I saw it for myself, and it was just unbelievable. That was also great news, and I was super excited to hear about that. My mom was excited. Everyone was excited. It was like a mood changer. You in a bad mood, you hear that, and you're just like, what? No way. And yeah, I'm really grateful. I'm thankful that one little speech can go out to many people and inspire and be heard by not just the people in my community, but everyone who's watching in this country, I guess. But it was the teachers. They thought, like, this isn't important. I think the protest was kind of like telling our school this is important to us. It's not just something on how we feel. Our emotions, like, are valuable, they're worth something. And I think it was just kind of like, we're taking the next step because nobody else will. And it did get a lot of eyes on us. It kind of showed that like our opinions matter, education matters as well, but we're willing to leave that like space to protest what our emotions are. And they're really supportive. They understood like our opinions and stuff. But I think it was to open the eyes to more people. Like, this is a serious topic, and nobody else was taking it serious. They just thought it was like a little protest, and it was a huge turnout. It was crazy. I was so nervous. My hands were shaking. I could barely speak. My throat was kicking out. After I was done, I felt like I was going to cry. I don't know why. I was happy. Everyone was standing up clapping, but it was just like, what just happened? And also, like, I was sitting on a side where there was people that didn't believe in what I believed in, but that's fine. Like, you have your own opinion. I had a lot of friends that were too scared to go up and speak. I mean, I was scared, but I was willing to take the backlash, whatever was coming. I'm used to it. I don't care what people say. So I said, okay, you guys don't want to speak. I'll speak for us. And with that, a lot of people were scared about how other people would view you and stuff like that. And I just wanted to talk for all the girls, for the future girls that are coming, because middle school isn't looking any better, especially for the freshmen that are too scared to talk because you're underclassmen and this is all new and you probably thought this is normal, this is how high school acts. No, it's not. And I think me speaking for everyone in the district was very empowering for women, especially because there wasn't a lot of people that were willing to speak for the young girls like me. As I was speaking, as everyone else was speaking, they wouldn't look at me. They wouldn't like hold eye contact. The bathrooms is just the first thing that comes. And then you have the sports, and then you have locker rooms. And if we can stop one right now, then it shows that we're not afraid to stop the many to come in the future.
Again, I want to be clear here. I'm not knocking her initiative. I'm not knocking the fact that she's a young gal who, again, you want to use the word courageous. Okay. Standing up against the masses, standing up against government and the man, leading some protest and walkout regarding boys and girls' bathrooms and that whole thing. Okay, fine. That's fine. I just look at it from a standpoint of energy usage. She doesn't even have to be doing that. Yes, she can draw attention to it to warn the brainwashed and the other individuals who are younger than her and their parents that this is an issue in their school district, which now is apparently receiving a Title IX investigation for allowing all of this to take place. That's fine and dandy. I'm all for it. But again, the real solution to the real problem is to bankrupt the school district by not showing up anymore. See, when it comes to the sports playing stuff, for example, and again, boys pretending to be girls and playing in girls' sports, ask Riley Gaines that question. Ask Riley Gaines the specific question, do you swim competitively anymore? And the answer is no. There is a difference between participating in a hobby that you're likely not going to, again, participate in for the rest of your life once schooling, quote unquote, ends. And once that association of the sport and the educational institution become, again, not synonymous with one another. Which begs the question again, why are you putting all of your chips into the basket of continuously participating in a thing that invites sexual degeneracy? And again, I want to be clear. I understand that everybody has a right to play a sport freely and safely away from trannies. I'm all for that. I don't want the trannies anywhere near anybody. I would prefer them just be in mental institutions. If you want to pretend to be somebody you're not, fine, just do it behind that brick wall and that cell away from civilized society. But the problem is that she's fighting an entire system here, an entire government that will not change even under a Title IX investigation. That's what she doesn't understand as a young kid, and that's what, again, the adults in the area don't understand, which is why you have these NGOs like Moms for Liberty who hold these kids up as being quote-unquote role models, when in fact all they're really doing is just perpetuating the maintaining of the system through their one, avenue of attack, however you want to phrase it. It's always the same stuff. Let's get some kids together who don't like what's going on in the school system, regardless of the political bend, and then we'll have them protest, and then we'll promote them, and then Maybe it'll draw some national attention, and maybe there will be some kind of an investigation. Every American school district should be investigated for Title IX violations because of pedophilia. That's the biggest Title IX problem within all American school districts. All of them. It's not necessarily, again, a boy pretending to be a girl and playing in a girl's sport. That's bad. But pedophilia and sexual assault of minors at the hands of school employees is the largest investigated Title IX cause within all American schools. But people just, again, they keep going back. So, again, a protest, fine, I guess. How about you just walk away? And as I've said a million times, how about you walk away and you force the thing to happen that's never happened? A mass exodus from a school district, massive unenrollment all at once, a lack of federal funding because no one's showing up, the school board and the school district panic. They go so far as to send out letters, which is what they would do first, apology letters. We're changing our ways. Please come back to our building. All those letters would go out to all of the parents, to all of the homes of the people who send their children to that school district. You would read the letter. You'd keep it just as a keepsake because it's laughable. And then you wouldn't go back. And then they open up the next school year with hardly anybody there, which means they can't pay anybody because they don't have the students, which means their entire budget would be upended by the state funding, and then they'd be screwed. That has yet to happen. There was this brief exchange down further in the thread. It said the following here. This is from an Elise lady, I guess, and they responded to this Scarlett Johnson who put this post out. And they said, Ella needs to stay safe above all. It should be adults fighting this issue. Ella's voice is important, but let's not lose sight that it is adults who need to fight for girls in K-12. People can be really mean and nasty on social media. And then Scarlett Johnson replied, her family is with her every step of the way, but you are correct. No teen girl should ever be in this position. Yes, but no teen girl should be exploited either by the side, apparently, that's propping her up and using social media recognition to get a point across. Again, just bankrupt the system. Pull your children out. Stop going. She's literate. She's fluent in English. She can read, write, teach herself. Why is she even going? Is it sports ball? Is that the only reason? Again, it's not a publicity contest. It's not a marketing contest. It's not what it's supposed to be. Again, Riley Gaines made the rounds, and now she's, out of the limelight by and large. No one really hears from her anymore. She doesn't really do many interviews, not that anybody knows about. Again, she was kind of a one-trick pony, and it was important, but she wasn't the first to experience that. She won't be the last. But she won't be the last because there's only one answer, and it's not continuously going and expecting something to change, or holding protests, or trying to force government to do a Title IX investigation into a school district. The answer is always far more simple, is my ending point on this. The problem is it's not profitable. It's not profitable for these quote-unquote mother-led organizations and NGOs and everything else that are, we need to take our schools back. We need to fight for these kids and blah, blah, blah. It's hanging on to these traditions that is the problem. We're in a different age now. We're in a different information age. And the school environment has been bypassed. It's just shaking people out of that mentality. That is the next hurdle. And unfortunately, it's a constant hurdle because the solution is far easier than any of the other stunts that get pulled that really just perpetuate the problem. Again, here's another one. And this is, I find this interesting and I see how it can be beneficial. But at the same time, part of me says, well, why doesn't a person just take the initiative to do this themselves? This is from bridgemi.com out of Michigan, Bridge, Michigan. It's titled the following: As Michigan falls further behind, some ask, time to overhaul high school? It says two groups, along with former Michigan Governor Rick Snyder, are aiming to revamp the high school experience in Michigan. They want to move away from just time in school to students to mastery of skills and more technical training. They say student disengagement is a factor in chronic absenteeism. This is more complex, in my opinion, than just introducing or reintroducing trade interest at the high school or even middle school level, which again is what these individuals are essentially pushing. The Michigan Merit Curriculum, as they say. Again, I could take this a number of ways. It's a long article. I'm not going to read it in its entirety here on the show, but they, of course, blame COVID-19 and online coursework as being the constant problem. Online coursework isn't the problem. And the COVID lie is the problem and was the problem because too many people within the environment believed it and fell for it and abused children as a result. But if they think that increasing trades within high school is going to fix the absenteeism problem, then they're not addressing the real issue. At least not in my opinion. I think that the large absenteeism issue within American schools has to do with the relevancy of the instructor based on the amount of information that exists in the real world. One outweighs the other. You have a copious amount of information on your cell phone that is factually accurate, again, with the matter of just a couple of clicks on the internet. But when you're censored in a school environment by the instructors themselves, and you don't even have access to your cell phone in many of these school environments anymore, based on, again, school district's own previous bad policy, which introduced them in the first place, and then that blew up in their face, then you have a relevancy problem. And the fact is the environment just isn't relevant, even when it comes to the trades. There are apprenticeships that exist all over the place. There are technical schools that exist all over the place. Again, if a person, for example, wants to go to high school, they can do that online while attending a trade school. They can do both at the same time. This is the real definition of school choice, is you take government out of the equation completely. And you allow a self-driven individual to basically say, here's what I want to do. If I need a high school diploma, fine, I can get that online. I can manage my time and do two separate things. I can learn a trade, which will lead to a job, and I can obtain a high school diploma at the same time, again, in an online environment. Maybe I do one thing a couple of days a week or a few days a week, and then I do the other thing, like trade school, a few days a week also, on separate days or maybe even the same day. But there's so much about the government-run system that it fails to tell the parents and the children what their actual rights are and what they can actually do. Again, as I said earlier, you talk about just energy and time wasting. Nothing defines it better than a school environment. The amount of time that is wasted and the amount of factual information that is censored from them and kept from them deliberately is overwhelming and abusive as far as I'm concerned. Again, teachers get fired for telling the truth in American schools. That's why they have to maintain a status quo. And that status quo is mediocrity. And let me mention this. And again, this is a subject too that I've brought up in the past before, and I've written about in books. And frankly, it's one that I could rant about for a very long time. But as we all know, this is the month of April now. I'm recording this on April 12th. And, it's that time of year in American schools where you have prom dances and parades and king and queen and all this other just materialistic, quote-unquote, rite of passage nonsense that exists within these school districts on a constant basis. And yet these school districts claim that the safety and security of students is their number one concern. And at the same time, they set up these events where people end up getting hurt and end up getting killed. Again, every year there are prom-related deaths, whether that be violent assaults, there's sexual assaults, of course, there's car accidents, there's drug overdoses, there's all of these things. And you would think that these school districts would say, well, wait a minute, this has become a tradition, so to speak, that we have perpetuated, and what good does it basically, what good comes from it? What positive impact actually comes from it? I would go so far as to say that it costs the school district dearly. And if you're like me, and you grew up again and went to school certainly in the 90s, I bet they had these things in the 80s and 70s, if not 60s also. But you have those mock car crashes on school campuses right before prom weekend. I mean, the simple fact that, again, that continues to be a thing, and it doesn't seem to deter hardly anybody, and people, again, still get injured and they still get killed on prom nights from drunk driving or being high behind the wheel or 1,000 other things, that you would think that the school districts would just say, you know what, instead of having these mock crashes in an effort to deter people from doing, making horrible decisions on a prom night or the morning after, how about we just not have prom altogether? How about you just get rid of the activity? The problem is again, that they view this as some kind of a rite of passage. They tell people and encourage people to not be sexually promiscuous, to not use drugs, to not drink, to not be reckless around one another, and yet they set up the actual environment and the stage for where such things take place. Unfortunately, not only when it comes to their misusage and abuse of the term rite of passage, like it even matters, they've talked themselves into what's specifically referred to as risk displacement. And what they actually tell themselves as a school district is, well, if we didn't have a prom of some kind, then they would just have their own as students or their own gathering together, and that would be far more reckless than anything that we could supervise or anything that we could be a part of. They tell themselves this, and they believe it. What they don't understand is what makes that weekend, or again, that evening, any different than any other evening. It's not about just getting rid of the useless activity, and this is, again, my opinion. People will disagree, that's fine. But if you're an academic institution, why have such an activity? Wouldn't you want to distance yourself from even the opportunity for there to be risky behavior or a deadly result or a deadly outcome of something horrible surrounding an event that you yourself continuously support and put on a constant basis? It just seems like common sense. Again, if you pose the question even to an AI system, it would say by default, yes, if you stop having the activity, less people are likely to get hurt. So why is that a bad thing? Again, this is part of the brainwashing and the mind control. It's designed to keep people into these activities and into these institutions and these activities within the institutions to make them believe that they have to participate at a certain age of their life, and if they don't, then you're going to be ostracized. That if you don't participate in any of this, if you don't go to prom, then you're a quote-unquote loser. And all of that other peer pressure, which again means the environment that's supposed to be teaching people to not fall for peer pressure is actually pressuring minors to engage in these kinds of activities. The hypocrisy is endless. Again, just last year alone, there were copious amounts of deaths regarding prom night accidents and things of that nature that, again, either hit the mainstream media or local news or, again, social media outlets. I mean, you name it. And I'm going to read some of these examples from just last year, which, again, most of them occurred in April and certainly in May. But I'm not sure what's more pathetic, the fact that the school environments continue to perpetuate these activities, or that adults who work within the environments actually enjoy these activities. That's a bit strange, is it not? I mean, it's I don't know. It's adults trying to relive the old days. It's kind of pathetic, I think. But the sad part is that there's also, I mean, that's sad too, but there's no national comprehensive database that tracks school districts across the nation and prom night illegality or any illegality happening around that time. Because if there were such a database, it would be damning information and very overwhelming. Again, it says, let's see here more specifically. Law enforcement and organizations like RAINN, RAINN, or the CDC do not categorize crimes specifically that way pertaining to prom night sexual assaults or, again, other crimes around prom night. It says sexual assaults among teens are already underreported, and prom-specific data relies on individual news reports rather than aggregated figures. And again, a lot of people keep it a secret because, of course, they don't want other people to know, and they don't want their child's life to be ruined publicly by poor decisions that were made or other illegality that befell them during that time. There was this out of Florida, St. Johns County, on April 25th of 2025. A 17-year-old boy was charged with felony sexual battery after allegedly raping his prom date outside her home, shortly after they attended a local high school prom. The assault reportedly occurred that same night. Another one from California in May of 2025, a Miguel Angel Juarez, 29-year-old para-educator at Dos Pueblos High School, was arrested for alleged sexual battery against a woman at a post-prom party held at the Bolero bowling alley. There you go. One in Illinois, 3 18-year-old former St. Vader High School students, if I'm saying that right, Kevin Niemanek, or something along those lines, Zachary Malasco, and John Clary II, were charged with criminal sexual assault of a female classmate at a school graduation party. Prosecutors alleged that the assault occurred inside a minivan during the event. While this was technically a graduation party rather than prom itself, it occurred during the prom graduation, whatever you want to call that, season, I guess. They pleaded not guilty, and the case is ongoing into 2026. Again, there are much older cases as well, but the point is it's that time of year again. Somebody's going to try to wear a dress that they're not allowed to wear. It's going to make the local news and then the national news, and then they'll get interviewed, and it's just recycled over and over and over again. Then, of course, we're coming up on graduation as well, and there's going to be awesome graduation speeches, and then there will be politically motivated, ridiculous communist graduation speeches, and all of that stuff, and all that hits the news all the time, and you'll hear it right here. I'll play the audio as soon as it's mainstream. You'll get it. But my God, it's just absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, stay tuned for that, because again, it's a rite of passage, ladies and gentlemen. It's a rite of passage that I have to play that audio on the show. And what would we do without it? Talk about something more important, I'm sure. But anyway, I'll leave you with this. I ended up with my yearly dosage of poison ivy on my face and 5 days of taking ivermectin, and it's gone. And the whole time I took it, it didn't itch at all. So I could feel it show up, of course, right under my left eye, and it started to swell a little bit. And then, yeah, ivermectin. There you go. I didn't use the paste, just took the oral stuff, and it dried up very quickly, and yeah, less than a week, it's gone. In fact, Dr. Makis had an article out very recently, I think, just a couple of days ago, on his Substack channel having to do with, what was it? I think it was herpes and shingles. Herpes and shingles. That if you use ivermectin for both, that it has a positive outcome for both. So, yeah, go figure. It's an anti-parasitic and anti-inflammatory, and it works. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. I will leave it at that. Thanks for listening as always, and I will catch you on Wednesday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.